let's try something a bit different. Zootopia is a movie created by Disney in 2016, all about anthropomorphic animals. Oh, wait, you want me to go into detail? Okay. So the first thing that immediately jumps out at me is the fact that Disney feels the need to tell us that they made this movie 3 whole times. First, there's the logo telling us this is a Disney movie. Okay, cool. Then immediately after, there's another logo telling us that they animated this movie as well. Fair enough, I guess, but right after that, we're informed yet again that Disney proudly presents this movie. Wow, I never would have known. Thank you so much for telling me, Disney. You're so informative. Okay, but for real, this movie begins with a kind of explanation of this world's version of prehistoric times, explaining how thousands of years ago, prey lived in fear of predator. Not because predators eat their prey to survive or anything. No, it's because predators had
an uncontrollable biological urge to maim and maul.
Notice the way she's explaining what predators were. Keep that in mind, it'll be important later for this film's message. Anyway, this opening talent show is pretty much this movie's tutorial segment, explaining why anything is happening. In this world, animals evolved from being regular animals as we know them to pretty much regular humans but with animal characteristics. So, anthropomorphic animals. They stand on 2 feet, talk, use things, have hands, use hands, live in buildings, but they're still animals, and so the world has to be designed around being accessible to specific animals. The opening play doesn't specifically state that last part, but it does establish that this world is indeed a world full of animal people. If you're hoping this video would be full of furry jokes, then prepare to be disappointed. I'm not creative enough for that. Side note, I find these suits that they're wearing in the play a little weird. Like, I'm aware that in this world, they wear clothes because they're civilized and they can't just perform or play naked. However, I can't imagine wearing a jumpsuit of your own naked body is really that much better. As this talent show presentation continues, we have more important things established to us. We're informed that prey and predator animals are still called prey and predator. We're informed that they coexist peacefully, unless you're southern. We're informed that our main character, Judy, wants to become a police officer despite there never being a bunny cop. And we're informed that there's a city that's pretty much a utopia where all species of animals coexist and it's a place where anyone could be anything. Oh, I get it. Utopia. Zootopia. You get an A+ for your clever writing. No, but seriously though, this is actually a pretty good opening. It disguises this huge exposition dump in a clever way, that being a play made by our main character. It's going over both the history of this world as well as this character's motivation, and considering it's a history play made by our main character, it all makes sense. Also, I mentioned earlier how in Zootopia, anyone can be whatever they want. Despite that though, this tiger kid wants to be an actuary.
I'm gonna be an actuary.
Who hurt you? Now, when you watch this movie as many times as I have, you really start noticing all the small details the creators of this movie put in. Like, for example, I really like the attention to detail the animators put into making the play. I love all the small little things they put into this play to make it seem like actual kids created it. Like, there's an intentional, charming shittiness to it all. Also, despite there probably being thousands of animals in this movie, the animators made sure to give each of them their own little details as well. There's a part I didn't mention where Judy reenacts being killed by a tiger, so she pretends to bleed everywhere. Not only can you see her parents' reaction to this, but even looking at the animals out of focus, you can see their reactions. As you can see, everyone is a mix of either shocked, concerned, or in disbelief. Except for this kid, who seems to be really digging shit. Also, as the play concludes, Judy says,
"Thank you and good night."
And then it immediately cuts to a shot outside in daylight. There's no way anyone working on this movie could miss something like that, so I choose to believe that she only said that just because she thinks that people always end plays like that.
Judy, you ever wonder how your mom and me got to be so darn happy?
Nope.
Anyway, the play concludes and her parents now know that Judy wants to become a cop. However, they don't really want her to become a cop, either due to a fear of her failing or because rabbits aren't supposed to be cops.
Bunnies don't do that.
Never.
Never.
So they start talking to her about how they had dreams, and then they gave up on them, and how you should too.
We gave up on our dreams and we settled. Right, Bond?
Oh, yes, that's right, Stu. We settled hard.
They pretty much just say, don't follow your dreams, but in a nice way. They also say that she should instead partake in the family business of being a carrot farmer, along with all 200 of her siblings.
Your dad, me, your 275 brothers and sisters.
How do you keep track of that many people? Anyway, Judy wasn't really listening to them, as halfway through the little speech thing, she notices a bully messing around with a couple of animals. This kid, Gideon, who is only the second Gideon in a Disney property to be an asshole, took these kids' tickets that they got from this carrot festival thing in town.
Nice costume, loser. Oh shit.
Judy and Gideon then have a small scurry where they kind of beat each other up, and it eventually culminates in Gideon holding her down and telling her she's worthless and that she'll never make anything of herself.
Remember this next time you think you will be anything more than just a stupid carrot farming bunny.
Also, just to let you know, in case you're confused, yes, I did cut up certain segments of that little part because I'm reviewing a movie on YouTube, and so I have to keep the clips as short as possible. Otherwise, this video will be claimed and blocked because of Content ID. It's a lot more annoying for me than it is for you, trust me. The bullies then walk away as Shooty gives their tickets back. Let me just say that's complete bullshit. There's no way he would have not seen her take them. He's literally holding her down, and we don't see any kind of hand movement with the hand she has them in the next shot.
Wow! You got our tickets!
You think she doesn't know that? Anyway, 15 years go by and she never gives up on her dreams and actually makes it to police school. Also, this simple text right here establishes that in this world, the life expectancy of animals is much longer now that they're civilized. Otherwise, 15 years would have certainly killed Judy's parents. Anyway, it's here that we get a 2-minute montage of Judy sucking at pretty much doing anything and then succeeding after reading a book while doing sit-ups. Obviously, I know that there's more they're not showing us, but half of this montage is failure, and then after these 2 shots, we see her succeed with 2 tests. I don't know, this probably could have afforded to be a bit longer. Maybe show her succeeding at the other 2 district tests she failed. Regardless though, in the next shot it's told to us by the mayor of Zootopia that Judy is now of historical value.
ZPD's first rabbit officer, Judy Hopps.
Also, just want to mention this lion mayor, who is named Leodore Lionheart, is voiced by J.K. Simmons, which has nothing to do with anything. I just really like J.K. Simmons. Not for any intelligent reason, though. I just like him in Gravity Falls and Portal 2. It's also here that we find out about Judy's epic and very inspired pun of a last name.
Judy Hopps.
In the next scene, Judy's parents are saying goodbye to her as she waits for the train heading to Zootopia. As they're doing that, her dad takes lots of effort to remind her to fear predators.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
And also bears, lions and wolves, weasels. Pretty much all predators, and Zootopia's full of them. And foxes are the worst.
Clearly here, so Judy has the animal equivalent of a racial bias, so the racial allegory makes a bit more sense. Oh yeah, this movie has a racial allegory. They also give her a bunch of shit that I'm surprised is even allowed to be made in this kind of world. Like, that's just a straight up fucking taser you're supposed to use on one specific type of person. How did this even hit stores? What kind of fucked up black market are they attending? Anyway, she only ends up taking the fox repellent just to make her parents shut up. She then escapes her family and boards the train to Zootopia. And then Judy puts on some music for the montage. However, instead of playing Guns and Rodents, or Fur Fighters, or Beagles the, Judy instead plays this movie's equivalent to Shakira, because she's played by Shakira, even though those other choices seem far more interesting, and also this song is really bland and uninteresting and kind of sucks. It's obviously here just to sell a soundtrack or a single or whatever, and it's not really anything that special. This isn't even a musical. Nobody breaks into song even as a joke. The only original music in this movie is background music, and this. Why? The good thing about this sequence, though, is we get to see some world building. We get to learn how exactly a world full of anthropomorphic animals would work. For example, throughout the city, there's different weather types for specific animals. There's different types of cars, there's special machines like this cup thing for taller animals, and these small hamster pipes for the rodents. The train has 3 different sizes for the 3 different types of animals. There's this drying place for animals that travel through the water. It's all really thought out. I also want to appreciate how much is shown in this train ride sequence. Remember, this is an animated movie, and that means they had to animate everything you see, and I just find that infinitely impressive because there is so much just in this one montage alone. There's even things that I don't even think the creators intended for you to notice. Like in this shot of Judy walking into the city, you can just see out of focus a scout troop here for no other reason than to just give this movie a bit more flavor. The people who made this movie clearly cared, and I really appreciate that. And getting back to the animation, as a whole, it's absolutely fantastic. The lighting effects are amazing and always fit the scene that they're in. The character designs are great, and more importantly, everyone is different which is more than I can say about other animal movies. There's some really great texture work too on the animals. The fur and the wool and the hair in this movie looks excellent. Yet again, the world design is amazing, and they really seem to take into account how some animals will get around in this world. And the animation as a whole is really appealing to look at. It's not stiff or boring. The animals move around energetically, and it looks good. And that's honestly all I can really say about the animation. It's just great. Alright, that's enough positivity for me right now. Jesus, how do people live like this? Calling things good or well made? It's disgusting. Anyway, back to the movie. As soon as Judy heads into the town, we get immediate whiplash from that train scene because Judy's apartment is an absolute shithole. Like, there's no bathroom here, or stove, or fridge, or faucet, or really anything. So I guess this is just a big house and everyone gets their own room or something. I don't know, maybe you're just supposed to bring your own fridge and you just shit on the floor or something. At least Judy doesn't seem to be bothered by the lack of anything at all. As she leaves the next morning, she debates on whether to take the fox spray with her, and chooses to do so for some reason. I mean, yeah, she has a bias that was established earlier, and that's why she took it, but I would think you wouldn't want to take that just in case somebody sees you with it. Anyway, she makes it to the police station and talks to the receptionist, who is in disbelief that they actually hired a bunny.
Oh, goodness. They really did hire a bunny.
What?
He also calls her cute, which I guess is a big no-no to call bunnies.
A bunny can call another bunny cute, but when other animals do it, it's a little...
I do want to say that I find it a little amusing how she's informing someone to not use her word, while at the same time having fox repellent on her tool belt. I mean, there's a possibility that was intentional to make her seem more hypocritical or whatever, but the way the movie frames it just kind of makes it seem a little confused. Also, in this shot, a donut just appears in the cheetah's neck, even though it wasn't there in the previous shots. That's a pretty easy fix. If you're able to animate a whole city, I'm sure compositing a donut into the previous shots isn't impossible. Anyway, Judy eventually makes it to our police briefing. During this police briefing, we're introduced to our police chief, Bogo. It's here that we're informed of the city's 14 missing mammals, which will be important for later in the movie. After Bogo assigns everyone to their duties, which is to look for the missing mammals, that just leaves Judy left, who is put on parking duty. I know with the way the movie portrays it, it's kind of saying that Bogo doesn't think Judy's capable of doing real jobs, but I'd kind of assume that kind of thing would be many cops' first assignments, you know, to ease them in a bit. Something else I think is worth pointing out is how the chief puts on reading classes when assigning the cops their jobs. Again, that's a neat little detail. I'm not exactly sure if that's some extra characterization or just intended to be a gag because, oh, this big strong buffalo needs reading glasses, but regardless, it's a neat detail, so whatever. Anyway, because she doesn't want to be known as the token bunny officer on the squad, she makes it a mission to outdo all of the one expectation Chief Bogo had for her.
Sir, I'm not just some token bunny.
Well, then writing 100 tickets a day should be easy.
And she vows to write 200 parking tickets before noon.
I'm not gonna write 100 tickets. I'm gonna write 200 tickets.
Also, just to show how much the police station cares, look at what they gave her. I can almost guarantee you that they modeled this car after those, like, foot-powered cars to give the babies. So then we get a small montage of Judy handing out a bunch of parking tickets, because our protagonist can't be too likable. Also, as Judy's handing out tickets, there's a part where you can pause that shows Zootopia is apparently a state, and not just a city. What's the point of me saying that? Well, none really. Anyway, after the montage of Judy handing out tickets, she notices a fox looking suspicious. Actually, wait, I want to talk about what happens before this. Judy's parking meter expires, but instead of just leaving, she decides to give herself a ticket. Just leave. Anyway, back to focus. The fox heads into an ice cream joint where he's refused service by the elephant that runs it because he's sus.
I don't know what you're doing skulking around, but I don't want any trouble.
So hit the road.
Anyway, this fox, later revealed to be named Nick, is actually not looking for any trouble, and he's simply here to buy an elephant-sized popsicle for his son, who really wants to be an elephant when he grows up. Yeah. Anyway, Judy, who was gonna draw her fox spray on him, realizes that she was just being dumb and leaves because who she thought was some kind of trickster just turned out to be a regular innocent dad. Also, I just want to note here, and this will be semi-important for later, the fox spray is no longer visible, presumably because it's under her vest. Anyway, Nick is still being refused service, so Judy goes to intervene. After letting the elephants know they're being absolutely fucking disgusting, Judy buys a Jumbo Pop for Nick and his son because he forgot his wallet at home, and they go their separate ways. Also, notice how this is an ice cream place in a world of anthropomorphic animals? Either this is a massive oversight, cows in this world are just fine with giving away their juices, or this is just evidence that the writers thought of every possible food that could have a vegan substitute, and so they wrote this into the movie to demonstrate that. Anyway, we cut to a shot of Judy doing more ticket work as she sees the elephant kid on her patrol. Through this, it's actually revealed that Nick is a popsicle hustler, as the movie calls it. He uses the juice of the big popsicles to make his own popsicles, and then he uses the wood from it for lumber delivery. Also, Nick's son isn't actually his son, he's a business partner, and he's actually like 50 or something, despite the fact that he looks like he's 2.
I'll bite your face off.
I hate how they don't take that last jug, by the way. Or at least given the timing of the scene, it makes it look like they didn't take it. Also, apparently he's been doing this for a long time.
I've been doing this since I was born.
But he's not regularly asked about the color of the wood because of this reaction.
That's redwood.
Also, I'm not exactly sure why he's having so much trouble with the ice cream place if he does this regularly. I guess he just went to another place for some reason, or maybe it was just a different clerk. When Judy finds out about this, she's kind of mad and also attempts to arrest him, despite the fact that there's nothing to arrest. And it's because of this attempted arrest that Nick makes Judy's life seem meaningless. He basically takes everything that Judy's believed since she was a child.
Tell me if this sounds familiar. Naive hick with big ideas decide I'm gonna move to Zootopia, where predators and prey live in harmony.
And then gives her a reality check and tells her that nobody cares about her or her feelings, and she sucks.
We don't all get along. That dream of becoming a cop, whoopsie. She's a meter maid. No one cares about her or her dreams. Soon enough, those dreams die, till finally she has no choice but to go home with that tail between her legs to become a carrot farmer. Everyone comes to Zootopia thinking they can be anything they want. You can't. You can only be what you are. Sly Fox, dumb bunny. You'll never be a real cop.
Also, he calls her carrots, which she's against the first time.
You're gonna want to refrain from calling me carrots.
But as the movie progresses, she doesn't seem to care for some reason. After Nick does the thing he just did, she returns home all sad, realizing that the perfect world she had foreseen for the past 24 years may not be as good as she thought. I also want to mention that this movie, despite sort of trying to fight against stereotypes, still has Judy eat carrots. Or just a carrot, I guess. Well, I mean, she doesn't eat it, but this movie has Judy interested in eating carrots. I'm sure plenty of people know this by now, especially if you have a bunny of your own, but still, it's worth mentioning. Carrots aren't really the best things for bunnies. They will eat them, but they're like junk food because they are full of sugar. Don't feed your bunny a bunch of carrots, they will probably die. Anyway, Judy then gets a call from her parents. They take notice of the vest Judy's wearing and they just kind of celebrate about how she's not a real cop in front of her because apparently they don't know what subtlety is.
Holy cripes, Bonnie, look at that.
Oh my, are you a meter maid?
Oh, no!
It's the safest job on the force.
Our prayers have been answered. Meter maid, meter maid, meter maid.
Dad!
They're only really in this scene to serve as a reminder that Judy feels like a failure right now.
You know, in case it wasn't already obvious.
Good morning, USA. I got a feeling that it's gonna be a wonderful...
My name is Cleveland Brown, and I am proud to be.
Okay, so while I was editing that little meme thing, I noticed something kind of weird about this scene. Between the time that she gets home to making a microwave meal to then talking to her parents, it's all apparently 8:39. But when she's talking to her parents, now it's 8:40. And then in this one shot of her putting down her phone, it's now 9:44. But then it cuts back to the alarm clock and it says 8:40 again. What? The next day happens to be equally as worse as the previous.
My mommy said she wishes you were dead.
However, a shop that she happened to be parked next to gets robbed by someone. So Judy finally has an excuse to be a real cop and starts chasing after the thief. As they're running, they head into a town of rodents, and so Judy and the weasel are much bigger now in comparison to everything else. Also, there's this other rhino cop that's mad at her for pursuing the weasel, despite the fact that the rhino's like 5 times bigger than both of them, and they're in the rodent city. Riddle me this, Rhino. How the fuck are the other cops supposed to get in there without destroying everything? idiot. Anyway, this is the first action scene of the movie, which there's a surprising amount of. Basically, Judy is going after the weasel and they have to maneuver around all these features of the town because it's much smaller. It's well choreographed, entertaining, and pretty easy to follow. However, I'm not really sure how accurate the size difference is here. Like, are hamsters and mice really that much smaller than a bunny? Also, Judy saves this rodent from a giant donut. Keep that in mind for later. Also, I just want to point this out because I thought it was cool. When Judy's finally chasing after a criminal, she's surrounded by rodents, giving her a bigger appearance, and people have to look up to her. However, most times before and after this, she's surrounded by bigger animals who don't approve of her, and they are looking down at her, both metaphorically and literally. That's a neat detail that I really hope was intentional, otherwise I just wasted my time telling you that. This whole segment does make me think that if there was an animal that was really genocidal and wanted to kill a bunch of people, they could just, like, drive their car or blowtorch this rodent town and just cause mass extinction. Alright, the final thing I want to mention is, if there was never a bunny cop, then how would there be law enforcement in the smaller areas of town? The only cops we've seen so far are super huge. Anyway, Judy catches the weasel in a donut and brings him into the police station. However, the chief wants to talk to her.
Cops!
He chews her out for abandoning her car, inciting a scurry, and endangering a bunch of animals just to stop a bad guy from stealing a bunch of flower bulbs that look like onions, saying that it's not her job to get the bad guys, it's her job to put tickets on cars, because he never wanted her assigned to him in the first place.
I want to be a real cop.
Do you think the mayor asked what I wanted when he assigned you to me?
Oh, also after that, Chief Bogo says this.
Life isn't some cartoon where you sing a song and your dreams magically come true. So let it go.
Yeah, Disney, you're so... I don't even know how to respond to that. Anyway, during their meeting, an otter comes and interrupts their conversation. How the hell did she open that door? It's like 10 times her size. Anyway, this otter is the wife of one of the missing animals in the city we established earlier.
His name is Emmett Otterton.
You think he doesn't know that? Also, the cheetah tried stopping her but couldn't catch up, which is a funny joke because cheetahs are usually fast, but this one isn't because he's fat and he loves food, so he can't go fast, and he's actually slow because he's fat and he loves food. Isn't that so inspired? He's fat. Judy offers to help find Emmett Otterton, which the wife is happy about, and like the caring and kind person he is, Bogo tells her to fuck off because he hates Judy.
You're fired.
What? Why?
Insubordination.
Clearly establishing some sort of villain status for the movie. However, the assistant mayor is there for some reason and is happy to see her helping find the otter. Also, apparently she tells the mayor, which will be a point of discussion later, so keep that in mind. Anyway, because of the assistant mayor's approval, the chief gives Judy 48 hours to solve the case, or she has to resign. And yeah, that's kind of the plot for the second act of the movie. There's a missing person mystery that Judy has to solve. The only problem, the case barely has anything on it.
Yikes! That is the smallest case file I've ever seen. Oh, I hope you didn't stake your career on cracking this one.
However, there is a picture with it. A picture that shows Emmett eating a popsicle, which only means one thing. If Judy wasn't hustled by Nick, then she'd be out of a job. Okay, so at this point, we've pretty much reached the second act of the movie, and something I want to discuss now that we're here is deleted scenes. The reason I'm talking about this, by the way, is because we've passed all of the points these deleted scenes would have appeared in if they were in the final movie. Now, when you look into the deleted scenes of this movie and other stuff like that, you come to realize that there's a completely separate movie that we didn't get that's like completely different in terms of what it is. A discussion about that is not going to be happening right now. I'm going to be saving that one for later because there's a lot more to talk about. For now, I'm just going to be talking about 3 deleted scenes in particular that are almost 100% finished, and they come from a version of the movie that we're more familiar with rather than this alternate version of the movie, which I'll be discussing later. That isn't to say that if you were to cram these scenes into the finished movie, then they would work or make sense, but they are pretty much alternate versions of scenes that we already got in the movie. Later on in this review, I'm going to be having 2 more discussions about the deleted scenes, but that's not for now. For now, I just want to talk about these. Oh, and also, in case you're confused as to why I'm talking about deleted scenes, I feel that it is important to actually talk about deleted scenes in a review, or at least I feel it's important to talk about in my review. Sometimes a movie could be made worse by a director choosing to cut out a scene. To illustrate my point, let's take an example from The Last Jedi. Because it's not like this movie's already talked about way too much on the internet. I'm kidding, by the way. Just calm down. One of the scenes that were cut from the final version of the film is this one of Luke Skywalker mourning the death of Han Solo. his best friend, and the husband to his sister. By the way, this death was caused by Ben Solo, who was Han's son and one of Luke Skywalker's pupils. He's also the main villain of the movie. I don't know how I forgot to mention that. This scene tells a story. Luke Skywalker is sitting alone, isolated from the rest of the galaxy, except the fact that Rey's there, but let's ignore that. Coming to terms with the fact that his friend, best friend, Han Solo, has been murdered because of him, because he is one of the reasons why Ben Solo turned to the dark side. That, combined with the emotional performance Mark Hamill gives without even speaking a word, and the soundtrack that's playing in the background, makes this scene not deserve to be cut from the final film. The Last Jedi has made a worse movie by not having that deleted scene in there, and that's why I think it's important to talk about deleted scenes, because situations like that could also be in other movies. Like, for example, the movie I'm reviewing right now. Anyway, let's talk about these 3 deleted scenes now. That totally isn't a vague sentence because this is a pickup line and I needed to rewrite the script. It's completely natural, 100%. This is flowing very well, shut up. The first deleted scene we have here is an alternate cut of the Jumbo Pop scene. I find this one pretty fascinating. There's certain parts that are sort of better than the actual movie, and then there's certain parts that are worse than the actual movie. Like, instead of just hating foxes for some reason, the elephant refuses surface to Nick because his son can't eat something that big and it'll make a mess on the floor.
He can't eat all that. Pick something else.
I'd rather not pick something else. He's been looking forward to this.
He's not gonna finish it. It's gonna drip all over the place, and I'm gonna have to clean up the mess. Pick something different or go somewhere else.
Which is actually a much better reason of refusing service. And that's also about it when it comes to the things I like about this scene. The rest of it shows Nick trying to get an ice cream, and they go really far with his lying here.
Could we go somewhere else? Sure, but we have come here. Why? Pachydermiopathy. He thinks he's an elephant. He has lived with this affliction his entire life. Every day is a battle. Oh no, I must have left my wallet at the orphanage. Gotta be about the worst birthday ever.
It's his birthday?
The big 4. Doc said he'd never make it past 3, but he's my little fighter. If there's one thing that I want to teach him, aside from the ability to speak, sweet orphan who is blind.
I mean, I know why they did it, but yeah, I certainly prefer Nick in the final version of the movie because he's a lot less of an asshole. So yeah, I like a portion of the deleted scene, but not the whole thing. The second deleted scene is an alternate version of Judy being sad. We actually get to see a bit more of her way back home, which I guess was cut because of pacing reasons. When she gets home, she wants to call her mom. However, because of a previously unseen scene where Bogo tells people to suck it up when they feel down, she decides not to, and then accidentally does it anyway. In this version of the scene, Judy changes out of her police costume into a regular shirt, and that actually introduces a continuity error because in the original movie, there's one shot where you can still see the original shirt. However, the rest of the shots in the original movie are her wearing the police costume. Anyway, because she changed out of her police costume, her parents don't notice that Judy's been assigned as a meter maid, and they're a lot more supportive.
So, tell me about your first day.
Oh, it was really great.
What's wrong?
I'm fine.
You are not fine. You need me to come out there. Still pack the car.
No, I'm good. I'm just tired from a big day in the field.
Good for you, Bun Bun. You're doing something I never thought a bunny could do. I'm so proud of you.
I love you guys too.
Also, I'm pretty sure in this version of the movie, Judy took the whole package instead of just a repellent, because they mentioned the fox taser.
Use that fox taser?
No, Dad.
Also, this scene shows a lot more fox hatred from Judy's family, because I guess there wasn't enough of that in the movie.
Ask her if she's been eaten yet.
No one got eaten, Pop Pop.
The foxes are red because they were made by the devil.
Oh, dear.
Personally, I like the scene a bit more than the one in the actual movie. I mean, I know why they changed it. The director said something about how everyone beating down on her in the actual movie motivates her to succeed through determination. While here, she's a bit more motivated by guilt instead of determination. But, I mean, I still like the scene a bit more. It makes her family slightly more likable.
Because they were made by the devil.
Slightly. The third deleted scene is this one after Bogo assigns her the missing otter case. Instead of giving her the case file, Clawhauser directs her to an elephant's room to use their computer. And because the elephant is elephant-sized, the Mac is sized up significantly. So the comedy of the scene revolves around Judy using a giant computer as a bunny-sized bunny. Is it just me, or is it kind of weird seeing Mac stuff in this movie? I don't know, I'm just used to seeing generic technology being used in animated movies, so it's kind of weird seeing Apple products, or at least Apple equivalents in an animated movie. I see why they cut this part, because it is kind of long. However, I do really like it, and I think it's funny. It probably could have worked in the movie, but maybe that's just me thinking out loud, I don't know. One final thing I want to mention, I don't know why it tells her to press such a weird keyboard shortcut. Is this like an actual thing or not? I don't use Macs. Anyway, this brings us neatly back to where we were in the story. Judy finds Nick and tries asking him questions about Emmett Otterton. However, he isn't really cooperating.
What happened, meter maid? Did someone steal a traffic cone? I also know that somewhere there's a toy store missing a stuffed animal. Get back to your box.
So Judy ends up tricking him into disclosing his earnings to prove that he evades taxes, pretty much to blackmail him into helping her.
$10 worth of popsicles can wait.
I make $200 a day, 365 days a year since I was 12.
You are under arrest. Felony tax evasion.
$200 a day, 365 days a year since I was 12.
$200 a day, 365 days a year, $1,460,000. According to your tax forms, you reported 0.
I find it a little forced that he just straight up told her everything she needed to know to figure that out.
I make $200 a day, 365 days a year since I was 12.
Hey Nick, don't forget to tell her your social security number, home address, and credit card details, you fucking idiot. But other than that, that was kind of funny.
She hustled you good!
In fact, this whole scene is kind of funny.
Then we'll have to do this the hard way.
Did you just boot my stroller?
Nick, $1,460,000, I think. I am just a dumb bunny, but we are good at multiplying.
You're a cop now, Nick. You're gonna need one of these.
In fact, I'll go a step further and say this whole movie in general is pretty funny.
Officer Hoxton, dispatch!
Are you familiar with Gazelle, greatest singer of our lifetime, Angel with Horns?
You know, after you. You're the cop. Okay, all clear.
Rabbit, whatever you do not let go.
I'm gonna let go!
No, you what?
My mommy says she wishes you were dead.
And I find that pretty impressive considering it's a kids movie, and usually kids movies have a god-awful sense of humor. I'm pretty sure throughout the video I've been giving examples of the jokes in this movie I like, but even then, talking about how funny a movie is pretty subjective, so instead of just going into insane detail about it, I'll just move on. Anyway, because of Judy's blackmail, Nick takes her to the last known place of Emmett Otterton, which happens to be a nudist colony run by this yak who has flies surrounding him for some reason. Keep that fly thing in mind, it's important for one of my nerd rants later in the movie.
I'd be happy to take you back.
Oh, thank you so much. I'd appreciate that more than you can imagine. It'd be such a... Oh, you are naked!
Oh, yeah, also there's a nudist colony scene in this kids movie.
We're a naturalist club. Some mammals say the naturalist life is weird. But you know what I say is weird? Blows on animals.
It doesn't really have any relevance to the movie. I think it's only here as world building and also to give this movie a PG rating. You can't sell a movie with a G rating anymore, and you can't have a movie with a whole scene implying nudity with a G rating. So, there you go. Pug rating. Pug. Oh yeah, also there's the furry demographic that they wanted to appeal to. So the yak character takes them over to the elephant because the elephant supposedly has good memories and was also the yoga instructor for the otter. However, the elephant is completely clueless of this otter who's been attending her yoga class for 6 years.
Hey, Nongi, these dudes have some questions about Emmett.
Who?
Been coming to your yoga class for like 6 years.
I have no memory of this beaver.
Luckily though, the yak inexplicably gives Judy a bunch of info she needs for the case, including the license plate, while trying to get the elephant to remember.
He was here a couple Wednesdays ago. He was wearing a green cable knit sweater vest, and he got into this big old white car. Needed a tune-up. Remember that, Nongi?
You didn't happen to catch the license plate number.
D03. I wish I had a memory like an elephant.
The license plate? Really? It's kind of a stretch, isn't it? Anyway, that's pretty much it for this part, and this also pretty much the format the movie takes on for the next half hour. They head over to a place, get some info. There's some interesting dynamic about these animals doing animal things, but also human things at the same time. And then they leave to go to the next place where they do the same thing, but it's different. It has a decent pace, which I enjoy. Yes, even in the next scene I'm going to talk about. It also keeps the audience guessing, or at least it kept me guessing when I first watched this 5 years ago. And when you take a second look at the movie after you've already known how the mystery goes, you'll find that most of the clues they eventually obtain make sense. It's probably why Act 2 is my favorite act of the movie. You know, out of the 3 acts. Anyway, let's move on.
Well, I had a ball.
Wait. What?
Hey Nick, may I just remind you what establishment you were in literally a second ago?
Oh, you are naked.
We're a naturalist club. But you know what I say is weird? Clothes on animals.
When they finish up and Judy figures out the next course of action, she realizes she doesn't have access to a computer, so she gets Nick to take her to a place where they can run a plate, which turns out to be the DMV. And as we all know, the DMV is very slow. So guess what joke they made?
They're all sloths?
Hey, Flash, want to hear a joke?
Sure.
Oh, it's run by a shit ton of
intelligent sloths.
That's what you call some comedic genius. I'm only half joking. Also, I was going to apologize for the frequent time jumps during that bit, but I ended up really liking that, so I'm not going to apologize. I don't know why Judy needed Nick to tell her that they could just run plates at the DMV, but whatever, the scene is moderately amusing. I like this scene. I think it's funny. However, I can certainly see how some people might not like it.
Do something.
The scene goes on for 4 whole minutes, and the whole joke is pretty much everything is slow. I mean, there are slightly different jokes they make, but they all revolve around the central theme of sloths are slow. But regardless, I think it's amusing.
Okay, maybe I should actually talk about what happens in this part.
They head in and meet with Flash 100-Yard Dash, who speaks really funny. It's not that he talks slowly, his words are normal speed. They're just really spaced out, which I think is a much better take on how sloths would talk than the usual
"they just talk, but it's slowed down"
method.
Officer Judy Hobbs, CPD, how are you?
I am doing just as well as I can be. What can I do for you today?
Okay, so imagine what I just showed to you, but it's at this pace, and I didn't have to cut it for copyright.
I am doing just
fine.
Anyway, after 4 minutes of Nick messing with Judy by making Flash get distracted.
Hey, Flash, want to hear a joke?
No.
What do you call a 3-humped camel?
I don't know. What do you call a
3-humped camel?
Pregnant.
They got their next location, a limo service in the snowy part of town. However, because they took so long in the DMV, it's now nighttime and the limo place is closed. One thing I want to point out is that after they were in the nudist colony, Judy said that they had 36 hours left to solve the case.
So you can't keep me on the hook forever.
Well, I only have 36 hours left to solve this case.
And then immediately after that, Nick came up with the idea to take her to the DMV, almost as a deliberate ploy to waste time.
You wasted the day on purpose.
I would never impede your pretend investigation.
I'm not exactly sure why they only had 36 hours left after they were done there. That means it took 8 hours for Judy to find Nick and then for them to go to the nudist colony. Why did that take so long? What did you do with the other 7 hours? Anyway, yeah, so the limo place is now closed.
And I will bet you don't have a warrant to get in.
Luckily though, Judy does a bit more police blackmail to get them both in.
Since your sans warrant, we're done?
Fine, here's your pen.
Hey. See you later, Officer Fluff.
You don't need a warrant if you have probable cause. I saw a shifty lowlife climbing the fence. Come on.
Sans.
Anyway, they find the license plate to the car that they're searching for and they look inside. Apparently this limo company doesn't lock their limo doors overnight.
Polar bear fur.
I just want to point out that Judy's looking around with the flashlight that's on her phone. I like this little detail just because it shows how much the police really doesn't care about her. They didn't even give her a proper flashlight. Anyway, they find some very much important clues like polar bear fur and music CDs.
Oh my god.
What? What?
The velvety pipes of Jerry Vole.
However, Nick's mood kind of changes once he looks at the back and sees how scratched up it is. Considering this is a world full of civilized animals, seems pretty weird, doesn't it? And one thing I want to point out, it's here when Nick's attitude goes from jokingly not helping Judy at all in the slightest to kind of being along for the ride. It's not until after this segment that he actually helps for like the first time, but it's at this point where he starts kind of turning around his attitude and becomes less of a waste. Nick then finds a cup, and using all of the evidence they have found in the car so far,
the velvety pipes of
he deduces that this is the car of a crime boss in the city known as Mr. Big.
Polar bear fur, Rat Pack music, fancy cup. I know whose car this is.
Whose car is it?
The most feared crime boss in Tundra Town. They call him Mr. Big.
He ends up being correct, as Mr. Big's henchmen, who are inexplicably there for some reason, end up capturing them. Alright, now let's take some bets here. I think that's the right term, I don't know. Okay, so given the fact that this guy is a crime boss, and that his name is Mr. Big, and what his henchmen are, take a guess what animal you think Mr. Big is. It doesn't even have to be reasonable. Just take a guess. Come on. Take a guess. Go ahead. Just come on. Come on now. Take a guess. You can do it. Take a guess. Yeah, that's right. He's an Arctic shrew. He's tiny. He's a little itty bitty tiny person. Rodent, not a person. They're animals. Who would have thought? Who would have thunk it? Who would have thought? Who would have freaking thought that the character named Mr. Big, the big, was actually tiny? Whoa! How the hell did this guy even get so much power? Like, I'd understand if he had control over a bunch of rodents, but I'm not exactly sure how he keeps these polar bears around. Anyway, Nick's bad relationship with Mr. Big comes from him selling a rug made from a skunk's ass.
What did you do?
I sold him an expensive rug made from the fur of a skunk's butt.
Okay, wait, so did the skunk donate his ass hair to make the rug? Or was that skunk murdered and Nick decided to make a rug from his ass? This isn't really a flaw with the movie. I just think it's a funny question because either answer is kind of weird. Anyway, this scene is okay. I've never seen The Godfather, but yeah, it's pretty obvious what this is parodying. But regardless, this scene is fine, and it's actually kind of similar to the sloth scene. The whole joke of the scene is pretty much just this tiny rodent mobster intimidating and almost killing our main characters, even though he's just a tiny little rodent. Oh wait, hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so Mr. Big is talking to Nick, and he's still mad at him for the whole skunk thing and told him to never come here again.
I trusted you. I welcomed you into my home. Grandmama made you a cannoli. How did you repay my generosity? A skunk butt rug. You disrespected my grandmama. I told you never to show your face here again, but you come here unannounced on the day my daughter is to be married.
Mr. Big then realizes that Judy is also there and questions what she is, and she responds with, "I'm a cop."
What are you? What's with the costume?
I am a cop. I'm on the Emmett Otterton case. Evidence puts him in your car. I'm going to find out what you did to that otter if it's the last thing I do.
And so Mr. Big proceeds to tell his polar bear henchmen to kill them.
Say hello to Grandmama. Ice 'em.
Whoa! No. If you're mad at me about the rug, I've got more rugs.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ice them. However, the day is saved in the end thanks to plot contrivance. Yup, this just so happens to be the father of the Arctic shrew Judy saved earlier in the movie. She comes into the frame to stop what's happening, despite the fact that it's literally impossible that she's here right now. I mean, earlier it shows how huge everything is and how a polar bear needed to bring Mr. Big into the room for him to even sit at that table. And we don't see or hear another polar bear bring the other Arctic shrew in. And even in this shot, seconds before she's introduced into the frame, she's not there. So yeah, this is an insanely contrived and stupid and nonsensical and... hold on, the script isn't loaded. This is very much contrived, stupid, nonsensical, and very clearly a way of just writing themselves out of this corner. But at least the rest of the scene before and after is fun, I guess. Anyway, Mr. Big lets them live and is just okay with Judy now. Also, Judy doesn't really seem to be bothered by this guy anymore. Like, at all. I mean, she is a cop. Does she not have anything else to say about what happened or about this guy who is very clearly described as a crime boss? I guess she doesn't want to kick a hornet's nest, but it's just kind of weird how okay with what just happened she is after the fact. Anyway, they're invited to the wedding and we get some more epic scale and perspective gags. Or I guess gag singular. Anyway, Mr. Big then tells Judy what he knows about the Emmett Otterton case, which reveals some revelations. I don't know what the proper word is.
Otterton is my florist. He had something he wanted to discuss. I sent that car to pick him up. He never arrived.
Because he was attacked.
Oh. He attacked. He went crazy, ripped up the car, and disappeared into the night. You want to find Otterton? Talk to the driver of the car. His name's Monches.
Anyway, they indeed go to see Mr. Monches based off of Mr. Big's suggestion. And while we're here, I want to bring up something here that I don't think I've mentioned much in this video, if at all. The music in this movie is really good. The Shakira song may be, kind of bad, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the music is bad. I bring this up now because the music in this specific part of the movie is really cool. It's not even throughout this whole scene, it's just this specific part I like. And that got me thinking about how good the rest of the movie's music is. I can't play too many examples because despite the fact that I'm commenting on the music in this review, I'll still get copyright claimed if I play too much of it. But regardless, I'm pretty sure I gave a good example of what I'm talking about. So, one thing you notice when you listen to this film's score is it uses a few leitmotifs, if that's the word. Basically, the same note progression, but they sound different because they're using different instruments or a different tempo. I think that's correct. I don't really know the music terminology. There's a couple of small ones that are in like 1 or 2 or 3 songs at the most, but there's 2 that are repeated in many songs. The first motif, and probably the more popular motif, is this one. And then there's the much more used, but probably less popular second one, which is this.
So you're helping plenty. Come on.
Not only does it sound pleasant to the ear, which is kind of a good thing when you're talking about music, but it also changes depending on where they are or what's happening in the scene. So for example, the part where they're in the jungle and they're walking all slow across this bridge, it's a slower tempo and uses more wooden hollow instruments. Compare that to the version that appears in the score of this action sequence. It's a lot faster and it's played with more harsher instruments like the electric guitar, which matches the chase that's currently happening in the scene. So not only does the music sound good, but it also matches the situation, which is also a good thing. I implore you, if you want to listen to the music yourself, go listen to the music yourself, because you literally can't use my video as a replacement for the music, because this video is fair use. And the clips I've used in this video aren't more than like 5 seconds, so please don't fucking strike me, Disney, I swear. Okay, so back to where we were in the movie. Judy and Nick go to Mr. Monches' place to get more information on the gopher. No, he's an otter. He informs them that Otterton went crazy and messed up the limo and him, pretty much going savage and becoming an actual animal as we know it. Mr. Monches also mentions how Emmett was yelling about something called the Night Howlers.
He just kept yelling about the Night Howlers over and over.
Which is a detail I want you to remember for later. It's at this point where Nick is starting to get slightly more helpful. When he hears about the Night Howlers, he lies, saying that that's what they want to talk about, so they can get more info on what they are. But before they can get any info out of Monches, he goes savage as well, in the same way Emmett did, and he starts chasing after them. I know I've mentioned the animation already, but just look at this. This is probably the best animated part in the whole movie. All of the movement is great, the environment looks great, it's raining and the rain effects look really great. I love the H2O in the water, I love the rain effects, the rain's really cool. I very much like this movie's animation in case you weren't aware, and I also like the rain. Anyway, they handcuff Monches and end up escaping him before getting caught in some vines as the police backup she called during the chase scene arrive. Judy then informs them that this case is much more than a missing person and that Emmett and the Jaguar went savage.
This isn't the Stone Age, Hops. Animals don't go savage.
But when she goes to show the officers, the Jaguar is missing and the chief isn't really amused, pretty much firing her on the spot. Again.
Badge!
Man, this guy really seems like Ow, my tongue. Man, this guy really seems like the villain of the movie, huh? Anyway, Nick comes and saves the day by pointing out that it hasn't been 2 days at all and they still have 10 hours left to solve the case.
No. You gave her 2 days to solve a case you guys haven't cracked in 2 weeks? Here's the thing, Chief. You gave her the 48 hours, so we still have 10 left to find our Mr. Otterton.
I find it amusing that he demonstrates that they have 10 hours left by holding up his hands, but he only has 4 fingers per hand, so he says 10 hours, but he holds up 8 fingers. That doesn't work. Also, how exactly did he know that the police didn't find the other missing animals for 2 weeks? I mean, we know that, and the police force knows that, but I don't think Nick at any point was informed that they've been missing for 2 weeks. I guess you could say that it's common knowledge around the city that these animals have been missing for 2 weeks, but if that was the case, then Nick probably should have known from the start that this wasn't a pretend investigation.
You wasted the day on purpose.
Madam, I would never impede your pretend investigation.
It's not a pretend investigation. This otter is missing.
Anyway, they leave on this ski lift thing, and then we get a super emotional, contractually obligated backstory about how Nick was treated awfully as a child because he was a predator.
All I wanted to do was join the Ranger Scouts. I was gonna fit in.
I promise to be brave, loyal, and trustworthy.
Even though you're a fox.
Is he gonna cry?
This backstory is fine. It's not a bad thing that this backstory is here. However, in retrospect, it just seems like it's only here for a payoff later in the movie. The backstory also isn't really eased into all that well, resulting in the flashback kind of coming out of nowhere. It's not horrible, all things considered. It's fine, and it sort of plays into his character well.
I learned 2 things that day. I was never gonna let anyone see that they got to me. If the world's only gonna see a fox as shifty and untrustworthy, there's no point trying to be anything else.
It's just that this part could have been handled a bit better, or maybe even written out in its entirety. But again, I'll come back to this later. Sorry I keep on saving things for later. I just need to get farther in the movie so I have more context to discuss the things I want to talk about. Anyway, after the flashback, Nick realizes that there are traffic cameras everywhere, and that they can use those to see what happened to Monches. However, because Judy doesn't have access to a computer, they go to get help from the assistant mayor, who we've seen like twice at this point. It's also here that we get to see how poorly Mr. Mayor treats his assistant.
But sir, you do have a meeting with herds and grazing. Sir, if I could just do...
Smellweather!
Yes, sir?
I thought you were going to cancel my afternoon.
Oh, dear.
While we're young, Smellweather.
Not that the other animals really notice or care.
You think when she goes to sleep, she counts herself?
Also, notice how she isn't really mad or sad about anything. That'll be important for later. Again. I hope you're remembering all these things I've told you to remember, otherwise, oh boy. Anyway, Bellwether tries to talk to Lionheart but gets blown off, and that's when Judy and Nick show up. Bellwether takes him to her office where she gives Judy access to the city cameras. 2 things I want to note here because I like mentioning the pointless. She says, "Oh, mutton chops."
Oh, mutton chops.
Which is kind of confusing considering she's a sheep in a civilized world. It's not really a flaw, it's just a confusing thing for her to say. It's like if I dropped something and said,
Ah, chopped up severed human arm.
Anyway, they're looking through the traffic cams and they see 2 wolves capture the jaguar, and they deduce that these are the night howlers because they're wolves. They howl. Ow. It is at this point where I spend the next like 2 fucking minutes laughing about me pretend howling in the recording booth / my closet because I've been spending hours recording in my recording booth / closet and my mental state was deteriorating, so you should feel thankful that I'm cutting it out. Also, I just want to highlight this bit.
If I wanted to avoid surveillance because I was doing something illegal, which I never have, I would use the maintenance tunnel 6B.
You'd actually make a pretty good cop.
How dare you.
It's pretty great. To be honest, this movie's character writing as a whole is pretty great. In fact, I'll go a step further and say this movie's writing in general is pretty great, at least for the first 2 acts. For example, the characters in the characters and how they bounce off each other, the pacing and the flow of the movie, the mystery that they're trying to solve, even these characters being animals in the first place. Usually kids' movies with animal characters do it because they want the movie to look cute, or as an excuse to reuse the same fucking character design over and over again. Here it actually has a reason to be here as it ties into the movie's message and narrative. Anyway, I just thought I would highlight that because I don't think I have yet. Anyway, continuing on with the movie, Judy and Nick have their next location, Dingy-ass Building McGee, which they got by following the wolves through the security cameras that we saw earlier. And speaking of those wolves, they have to get around them to sneak into the building, and to do that they howl, or at least Judy howls, and that causes the other wolves to howl. because I guess it's an involuntary thing.
Gary, quit it. You're gonna start a howl.
I didn't start it.
Okay. Anyway, they sneak through the sewage pipe and end up in what looks to be an abandoned hospital room with a bunch of hospital equipment everywhere. They eventually find a door to another room, which looks to be both a hospital room and also a prison. And kept in these prison cells are a bunch of savage animals. They find their otter, which seems like it would be the end of this movie's mystery, but they also discover that all of the missing animals established at the beginning of the movie are here, and they've all gone savage, just like the otter. Kind of a stretch that every missing mammal is here, but whatever, I guess. It's not totally beyond the realm of plausibility. It's just kind of dumb. This is also where we get to find out who made all of these animals go missing. It isn't the police chief, as some people were probably maybe thinking. Nope, it's actually the mayor of the city who kidnapped and imprisoned these animals because they went savage. A first-time viewer may automatically think this reveal shows that he's a bad guy, but really he's not doing this for any nefarious reason. When you listen to what he's saying, it's apparent that he's imprisoned them out of safety for both the city and his job, as he has no idea why only predators are going savage.
I don't want excuses, Doctor. I want answers. I got 12.5 animals here who've gone off the rails crazy.
The only animals going savage are predators. We need to come forward.
And how do you think they're gonna feel about their mayor, who is a lion?
Judy records the evidence to show to the police, but then her parents call her because conflict. That phone call ends up triggering an alarm, and the cell that they're hiding in closes, so to escape, they have to flush themselves down this huge toilet. Excuse me? Is the toilet really that big to be able to fit a fox and bunny? How are they not dead or dead from that? And yes, this is indeed the third time I'm mentioning this. Look at the animation! It's so good! Oh my god, look at it! That's bad delivery of the script. It's so good! Look at the water! It's neato! I already screamed, I'm not doing it a second time. Anyway, the case that was pretty much this movie's whole plot is now resolved, the mayor is arrested, and Judy thanks Nick for all the help he eventually did for the case, and so Judy gives him a police application form so they could possibly work as partners. She is then invited to take part in a press conference and discusses the potential reasons as to why the animals are going savage, because that's why they were imprisoned in the first place. Her theory states that because predators are the only animals going savage, it must have something to do with the predator's biology, and they may be reverting back to how they were in this movie's equivalent of the Stone Age. Nick hears what Judy says, and it kind of triggers some kind of PTSD flashback to his childhood, and he's offended that Judy said what she said, pretty much stating that predators, even after thousands of years, are still inherently dangerous and untrustworthy.
It may have something to do with biology. For whatever reason, they seem to be reverting back to their primitive savage ways. So we must be vigilant.
And yeah, this is pretty much the second act breakup. Oh joy, the second act breakup. You know, where the duo you've been watching throughout the whole movie have a falling out and separate, and instead of just talking it out like rational people, they instead start hating each other out of fucking nowhere. Kind of like real people. If you haven't seen this trope in any other movie, then I regret to inform you that you're a pathological liar, because it's in pretty much every movie ever made.
Okay, yeah, that might be a bit of a stretch, but it's still in a shit ton of movies regardless.
This movie is very obviously guilty of having a second act breakup. However, I will give this movie a little praise for how it's handled. It's not a total train wreck, and I can clearly see that the writers tried their very best to make this work. Like Judy's subtle bias of predators, and more specifically foxes, that's been hinted at / shoved in your face during the whole movie gets its payoff here. I appreciate how it's not a mutual hatred and it's just one character who gets mad. And I appreciate the difference in visuals from this and the last scene of them together. The lighting is different, the angles are different and more close up and individual rather than them being in the shot together. And also the music track that's playing in the background is called Some of My Best Friends Are Predators, which the average audience member wouldn't know, but it's still worth pointing out anyway, because I think that title is fitting I guess. I just like that title. And yeah, that's kind of about it. The scene is kind of eh. Okay, so first of all, this seems to be the payoff of Nick's backstory that came a little out of nowhere earlier in the movie. I know that the way Judy was treated by the cops sort of reflects Nick's history with the Junior Scouts.
Never let them see that they get to you.
Things get to you?
Not anymore, but I was small and emotionally unbalanced like you. I think I was 9, and all I wanted to do was join the Ranger Scouts.
But still, it's kind of hard to make that connection, even in retrospect, and the backstory is kind of forgotten about until right now, and this is the last we see of it, and even then, it's not really brought up directly. Why am I talking like this? Again, it could have probably been written out of the movie, and not much would have changed. Also, this whole bit with the fox repellent is really forced.
Are you afraid of me? You think I might go savage? You think I might try to eat you?
I mean, I'm fine with Nick bringing it up, but having Judy almost pull it out after all they've been through is kind of fucking dumb. Also, and this is more of a small thing, but remember how in the beginning of the video I mentioned how you couldn't see the repellent under her vest? Well, apparently Nick could somehow.
Fox repellent? Yeah, I don't think I didn't notice that little item the first time we met.
I guess what he meant by that is other times, but he describes it as first time we met, and I wouldn't consider other times first time we met scenarios. And the final thing that makes this scene stupid, it's really fast. Like, it is very fast how he just starts hating Judy.
Oh, that went so fast. I didn't get a chance to mention you or say anything about how we...
Oh, I think you said plenty.
Nick!
You guys spent 2 whole days together, figuring out a missing persons incident. You were willing to be partners with each other, doing police work or whatever the hell. And you guys fall out within the span of a single minute. Alright, we did it. We reached Act 3, which only means one thing. More deleted scene discussions. However, before I start doing that, I want to say one thing. I messed up. Yes, I have made a mistake, everybody. Absolutely uncalled for. And no, that mistake wasn't buying this for $30. I didn't mean to do that. My mistake was actually how I handled these deleted scene discussions for this review. And also just the way I released this video in general. This is interesting and relevant, I promise. Don't leave, please. I want your watch time. So, as you probably know, this review is, or was, whichever is applicable, split up into parts. When I made the choice to do this, the reasoning I had in my mind was mainly so that the video would come out quicker, kinda, and also because I was experiencing various copyright issues. As of now, after more than a month of me having made the decision, I have changed my mind on the whole parts thing, as I have now figured out how I can edit my reviews in a way to keep them from being claimed. And also the whole frequently released videos thing doesn't matter for a channel like mine. So yeah, this whole multi-part review thing will not be coming back. Now, what does this relate to me talking about deleted scenes from Zootopia? Well, when I was first writing this review, I only saw it necessary to talk about the 3 deleted scenes that were mostly finished. I would say the reasoning for that is because they're from a more familiar version of the movie, but the real reason is that I'm just lazy. And this choice to not watch the rest of the deleted scenes carried over until I was editing the review. Literally, when I got to the part in the review where I started talking about the deleted scenes, I thought, hey, maybe I should actually look into the deleted scenes a bit more, in case there's something I want to talk about. And yeah, I'm glad I did that, because there's a lot of discoveries I made when looking at the deleted scenes of this movie. Okay, well, maybe not a lot of discoveries, but the original version of this movie is really interesting to talk about. So now, this is where the mistake I made comes in. Okay, so you remember how I wanted to start talking about the deleted scenes, but I already started editing? Well, the plan I had in my mind at this point in time was to finish editing the review, which at this point I had done 40 minutes of, and then at the end of it, I write in more scenes talking about the deleted scenes. However, when I got 40 minutes into the review, I started having copyright trouble. Despite me editing my footage in a way that shouldn't have been claimed, it was getting claimed. However, it was only getting claimed if the video was like over 40 minutes. I had also been away from YouTube for like nearly a month, so it was here, 40 minutes into the review, that I made the choice to split up the video I had into parts. And then shortly after making that decision, the first 20 minutes or so was released as part 1. Anyway, then I started editing what you know as part 2. Then when I was hitting the natural stopping point, I realized that that video nearly hit 40 minutes, and I still didn't write any new parts talking about the deleted scenes. However, I also didn't want part 2 to go over 40 minutes in case I experienced more copyright trouble if it did. And so I just left it at me talking about the deleted scenes I was always going to talk about since the beginning, with just a few new pickup lines saying how I would revisit the topic twice more in part 3. Later on in this review, I'm going to be having 2 more discussions about the deleted scenes, but that's enough for now. For now, I just want to talk about these. Once more for the storyboarded deleted scenes that were from a more familiar version of the movie, and then one final time talking about the older version of the movie that nobody ever saw. What I forgot about though, or just didn't look into enough or whatever, is that if we take away the almost complete scenes that I talked about before and the scenes from the older version of the movie we never saw, that just leaves 2 other scenes left for me to talk about that falls into this category of storyboarded scenes from a more familiar version of the movie. And if I had knew that before I sent off part 2 into the world, or if I hadn't shot myself in the foot in the first place and decided to make this review in 3 separate sections, I would have probably not talked about the deleted scenes 3 times and would have probably come up with a more organic way of talking about them. Maybe I could do a video about all the bullet holes in my feet, I don't know. I'm kind of a massive dumbass who is also very self-conscious and very anxious all the time, in case you didn't know that. Anyway, there isn't really much I can do now without completely changing portions of the video or some ridiculous shit I don't need to do. So I just thought it would be best to explain why the pacing for this review is kind of weird and why the deleted scene discussions are also kind of weird. I don't even know how much of that story you understood. I tried to tell it as neatly as possible. Anyway, now that that spiel is out of the way, let's talk about those 2 deleted scenes. Okay, so the first scene to talk about out of the 2 scenes to talk about is an alternate version of the opening. And by alternate version, I mean it's like kind of the same, but like really different. Like it's a play and Judy's a child, but other than that, this scene is very different from the final movie. So the scene begins in a similar way as the final movie's opening. There's a kid talking about how animals used to be like actual animals instead of furries. However, instead of Judy being mauled to death and having her entrails ripped out as some other random kid. Also in this version, the child pulls out like a fake squeaky toy heart, which I am very upset is not in the final movie. Also, the play ends here. None of these 2 animals are Judy. They're just a different group from Judy's, and their play was just exclusively torture porn. Okay, so after these kids are done and we get a laser pointer gag that they didn't include any variation of in the final movie, we then get a play from Judy and her disposable friends. I assume in this version of the movie, Judy already lived in Zootopia, as they sing about how much they love their city, rather than how much Judy really wants to move there.
What do we love about our city?
Then they sing about their future jobs. The woodchuck wants to work with wood.
I wanna work with wood, cause I'm a woodchuck.
Writing. The raccoon wants to drive a truck.
I'm a raccoon, so I'm gonna drive a trash truck.
If you don't see the correlation between those 2 things, may natural selection come for you. Okay, somehow when I was writing the script, I didn't realize that he said drive a trash truck. I thought he just said drive a truck and the word in front of truck was some word I didn't understand. I only noticed this while editing, so may natural selection come for me, I guess. I don't even know what that means. The squirrel wants to sell nuts.
Squirrels like me wanna sell some nuts.
I'm not making a joke about that. And Judy nearly says she wants to work with carrots before she realizes no. She doesn't want to work with yellow vegetables. She wants to do other things. But then her teacher, Miss Armadillo, tells her that animals shouldn't do some jobs because they're worse at it than others.
What if I want to be an astronaut or a paramedic?
Judy, look, certain mammals are just better at some things than others. When I was your age, I wanted to be a firefighter. But armadillos ball up at the first sign of danger.
Then someone tells Armadillo teacher that some little shit got stuck in a tree. Miss Armadillo teacher curls up into a ball because payoff, and then Judy takes lead by grabbing the laser pointer used in that one joke earlier. It's like they say, if you have a laser pointer in the 3rd minute, establish it in the 1st. If you don't know that quote, then you're uncultured swine. Judy eventually saves little shit by getting him to stick to the tree from his interest in the laser pointer. I guess his claws dug into the tree so hard that he just didn't fall, which is confusing. Why didn't he just leave? Then a cop congratulates Judy for doing his job and gives her a fake badge, even encouraging her to become a police officer.
You should think about being a police officer.
She can't be a cop, she's just a bunny.
What the fuck? She just saved your sad, miserable life, you asshole. And that's the end of the scene. The one in the final movie is much better. Might have something to do with the fact that we just see a lot more in the final movie, or it just does a much better job of being concise, but also adding to Judy's character traits and character flaws and all that shit. Although, one positive thing about this deleted scene, it's a lot funnier than the actual movies. Next up is this scene where Judy takes Nick to her house. According to the directors, who, by the way, are at the beginning of all of these deleted scenes, well, I mean, most of the deleted scenes. This deleted scene about them going home takes place after the scene with Savage Mr. Muncher. Nick is apparently injured somewhere.
This actually took place right after Mr. Monchus had gone savage and Nick had gotten injured during this encounter.
And Judy takes her to a safe house with a space in the middle.
You said this was a safe house.
Yeah, safe house with a space in the middle. A house that is safe.
Fun fact, this bit of dialogue earlier in the movie.
You're under arrest.
For what?
False advertising.
I didn't falsely advertise anything.
You told that mouse the popsicle sticks were redwood.
Red wood, with a space in the middle. Wood that is red.
I only understood after watching this deleted scene. I legit thought that Nick was talking about this little speck of beige colored wood here when he said space in the middle. And I even recorded a line for it in the review. Excuse me, sir, that is not a space in the middle. Anyway, my stupidity aside, as Judy and Nick head inside Judy's apartment, her whole family is here. Well, I mean, not her whole family.
275 brothers and sisters.
But enough of her family, I guess. Anyway, they're all there because she forgot to call her family.
You were supposed to call every day, and we got worried.
I'm assuming this scene is still in this version of the movie, and if that's the case, she was only given 48 hours to solve this case. There's 12 hours left at this point in time, according to this line.
We only have 12 hours left to solve this big case.
Which means Judy didn't call her family for 1 day. My calculator broke doing that. How'd they even get here? I know it'd be obvious to find her apartment room because, like, Jesus Christ. But how'd they know which apartment complex she lives in? And how'd they even get inside her room? Anyway, Judy's family eventually sees Nick, and like the racist hick red state southerners they are, they immediately get uncomfortable by his presence, even though he's literally just standing there. They even mention the fox taser.
Judy, quietly, pass me the fox taser.
Like, not even a foot away from him. Wait, shit, I'm Canadian. Not even a meter away from him.
You have a fox taser?
By the way, I really like this really quick storyboard drawing of Nick. It looks nothing like him, but I think that's probably why I like it. Anyway, Judy tries to calm everyone down, but fails.
Dad, he's with me. It's okay.
You brought a fox to your home?
He's more than a fox, Dad.
Sweet cheese and crackers, he's your boyfriend.
Anyway, Judy tells her family that if they feel uncomfortable around Nick, then they should leave. And then one of Judy's siblings find her meter maid costume. Nobody knows she was a meter maid yet in this version of the movie though, so the family realizes that Judy lied to them about being a real cop.
Judy, you lied to me?
Even though she is currently on a missing person case right now. So right now, she is a real cop. Judy's dad then tries to take her home because her daughter is a liar and also made friends with a fox.
Okay, you know what, that's it. You're going home right now, young lady. I was worried about you coming here in the first place, and now you're lying and other things. Judy, this is not who you are.
But Nick then gives a speech that's reminiscent of the one he gave Bungo here, which is what the speech was eventually rewritten into because this part of the movie didn't exist yet.
So she lied about being a meter maid. Who wouldn't lie about that? Here's the thing. When I first saw Officer Toot Toot here, I thought she's gonna get stepped on. But you know what she said? Bunnies from the burrows do not get stepped on. They step up. And she has. We only have 12 hours left to solve this big case. Yeah, make her go back to Carrotville now. We'll never know if Officer Hobbs could be a real cop.
Well, I guess we could give her 12 hours.
There you go. Go on home. Make another baby.
Wait, what the fuck?
Ah, yes, the perfect thing to say to your girlfriend's parents as they leave. Go home and fuck. I mean, sorry for being blunt, but that is literally what he said. I mean, not literally word for word, but anyone who's passed health class knows what those 3 words mean. Go home, make another baby. Why the why? Why would you? Wait a minute, actually, how are babies even made in this world? Looking back at the nudist colony scene, no one in this world even has any reproductive organs. Reproductive organs, okay. Well, I mean, I've already crossed the line at this point, so I might as well just say that nobody in this world has any or but regardless of what I actually end up saying, the point is still there. Okay, I'm not stupid, I know why. I just find it humorous to point out that baby making is a concept in this world, but at the same time, it makes no sense. And to make it make sense, Disney would have had to either cut this scene, which I guess they were too stubborn to do, or go the full-on NC-17 route and make this scene exclusively furry. I should probably just move on at this point before YouTube decides to fucking smite me. And yeah, that's about it. And yeah, I'm glad the scene is deleted. I mean, it might have been funny if Nick still somehow went to Judy's house in the final movie and maybe commented on how small it is or something. But other than that hypothetical scenario that didn't even happen in this version of the movie, everything good about this scene was still put into the movie another way. This is a perfect example of a deleted scene. It's interesting and not that bad, but it has no business being in the final movie. And strangely enough, neither this scene nor the alternate opening is in the Disney Plus Extras tab for some reason. That's pretty weird. Is it region locked, or is it just exclusive to the physical movie's bonus features? Or YouTube. Whatever though, I watched the deleted scenes and now everything's right in the world. Except for the fact that this video's now slightly more messy because of my own foolishness. Anyway, now would be a good time to get back to the movie. Where was I again? Oh yeah, the shitty breakup scene. Let's see how seamless this audio transition won't be. Okay, so they split up, the movie is now slightly worse, and Judy feels bad. So to lighten the mood, I just wanted to point out this bit down here. Have you ever been arrested, charged, or received a notice or summons to appear, or pled guilty to any criminal violation regardless if the record was sealed? No. I like how full of small details this movie is when you stop and pause every 10 seconds to look at everything. Kinda like what I did. With that being said, I will not lie to you, this movie, while it doesn't really fall apart in the third act, its quality of writing kind of dips, and I'll highlight examples that I find notable as we go along. This is why I said almost great in the title, by the way. Unless I changed the title again, which I tend to do every minute. As the movie continues, we see that predators are going savage is becoming a lot more of an issue around the city, as the mayor can't bring in his team of wolves to keep it quiet. The city is now being torn apart due to the incidents. Prey animals are now reacting a lot more negatively towards predators, as predators speak out against it. So the city's pretty much just having a race war. I'll come back to the whole race relations metaphor slash allegory slash symbolism slash moral slash message slash statement slash whatever else this could be considered in a bit. So just keep it in mind for now. Anyway, we cut to a shot of Judy working on what we can see as some sort of savage mammal report file, as Chief Bogo tells her to follow him somewhere. Something I want to note here is that Bogo's attitude, in comparison to the beginning of the movie, is a lot different, and I appreciate that the writers chose to do that. It shows that he had a change of heart when it comes to what he thinks of Judy, because she solved all of the missing animal cases. What I'm saying is that this is a much better outcome than Bogo still hating her for no reason, even though she solved the missing animal cases. I like that. This neat. This coolio. We also see that Clawhauser, the receptionist, is being relocated because a predator is too scary of a thing to see first thing when you enter a building.
Clawhauser? What are you doing?
They thought it would be better if a predator wasn't the first face you see when you walk into the ZPD.
Clearly showing how bad things have gotten within the past week. Anyway, Bogo takes her to the new mayor's office, the new mayor being the sheep from earlier. She wants to make Judy the new face of the police force, as she's trusted by the general public by exposing this as a problem.
Our city is 90% prey. Right now, they're scared. You're a hero to them, so that's why I want you to be the face of the ZPD.
However, Judy doesn't see it that way, saying she is the one that made people believe that this is all the predator's fault.
I'm not a hero. I came to make the world a better place, but I broke it.
A good cop is supposed to help the city, not tear it apart. I don't deserve this bad.
So because of this, she decides to resign and go home, ending up working on her family's farm, which is what her family always wanted for her in the first place. However, they can definitely see something is very wrong here.
How we doing?
I'm fine.
You are not fine. Your ears are droopy.
To comment on what she just said, I like how if you go back throughout the movie, you can see that the droopy ears thing actually applies throughout the whole movie. When Judy's sad, her ears flop, and that's cool. However, and I know I'll probably undo the whole point I made just by saying this, I don't really know what Judy's mom was expecting, because she's wearing a hat. and there's no holes in the hat. Also, when I paused on this frame to write a bit more of the script, I noticed this sign here showing how the currency symbol in this world is unique compared to ours. That's kind of interesting. Anyway, someone comes over to visit, and it turns out to be Gideon, the bully character from the start of the movie, who grew up to be a great pastry chef and now works with Judy's parents because of what she told them at the beginning of the movie.
Foxes are the worst.
It's in their biology. Remember what happened with Gideon Gray?
Gideon Gray was a jerk who happened to be a fox.
3 weeks later.
We work with them now.
And we never would have considered it had you not opened our minds.
Also, this isn't really a flaw, but I find this kind of funny.
Gideon Gray. I'll be darned.
Hey, Judy, I'd just like to say I'm sorry for the way I behaved in my youth. I had a lot of unchecked rage and aggression.
Like you aren't going to confirm that's actually Judy first? First time meeting her in like 15 years and you're just like, I'm sorry, oh my god. Have you been preparing for this your entire life? Anyway, we catch a shot of some bunny children running through the garden and they nearly run into these flowers. These flowers are called Mindycampum hollythis. These flowers are called Mindycampum hollythisiae. Mindycampum hollythisius? These flowers are called Mindycampum hollythisiae. These flowers are called Mindycampum hollythisius. These flowers are called Mindycampum hollythisius, or night howlers.
Don't you run through that Mindycampum hollythisius.
There's a $4 word. My family always just call them night howlers.
And it is a flower used in farming to keep bugs off produce.
Those flowers, I use them to keep the bugs off the produce.
However, when eaten, it causes animals to go crazy.
Terry ate one whole and went completely nuts.
Fit the dickens out of your mother.
Doesn't that sound familiar? Yep, these are what night howlers are. They're not wolves, they're actually flowers. And so Judy, with that information in hand, heads back to Zootopia in a rush.
That's it! That's what I've been missing! Hurry, come on! I love you, bye!
Are you ready to hear me, bitch? Okay, so first of all, how is the shortened version of Mindycampum hollythisius? How is the shortened version of Mindycampum hollythisius night howler? The only reason I can see for why these things are called night howlers are because the animals from earlier subduing the savage animals are wolves, and it was required for the plot.
Predators are the only ones going savage.
Yes, that is accurate.
Why is this happening?
We still don't know.
Why are they pointing their microphones at her? There's like a bunch on the stand already. There should be a connection between these two names, but the only connection I see is the writers writing in a twist. And the flowers aren't real, by the way, so they had free reign to call this flower literally anything. So instead of Mindycampum hollythisius, why not call it something that could more easily be shortened to night howler? Maybe something like Midnight Howl Campus or something. Maybe not that name specifically, because that name sucks, but I'm sure these things could have had a different name as to much better fit the shortened version. The second thing I want to say is, she knew what Mindycampum hollythisius was.
Those are a crocus varietal called Mindycampum hollythisius. They're a Class C botanical, sir.
But she has never, ever in her life heard the shortened version of the flower. She's just lived her whole life calling it Mindycampum hollythisius. It's kind of weird. The third thing I want to mention, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the flowers, but more specifically the bug line, and this kind of extends to a greater irregularity, I guess you can call it, about the movie.
Those flowers, I use them to keep the bugs off the produce.
Apparently, in this world of civilized animals, there are still bugs that are like the bugs in our world. We saw them earlier in the movie, yes, but I was saving that discussion until now. Keep that fly thing in mind, it's important for one of my nerd rants later in the movie. Maybe I would be able to buy that bug thing, I guess, but the bigger thing I want to discuss is how otherwise there are only mammals in this world. There's no reptiles or birds, there's just mammals. That's a little confusing. Here's my personal guess as to why this is. This world is divided by predator and prey, and including reptiles and birds could make animals both predator and prey, thus making it less black and white as to who is who. That's not really an in-universe explanation, that's more of a technical behind-the-scenes explanation, but that's the best guess I have for why there's no reptiles or birds. Despite the fact that the Shakira song that's played in the movie mentions birds. Also, if there's only mammals, do whales and dolphins count? Or do they even exist? Do echidnas and platypuses count in this world? I guess they would know what eggs are if they count, because they're mammals that shit eggs. that's not... Now, nothing in the plot is necessarily made or broken because of the fact there's no birds or reptiles, and we don't know if whales exist or if echidnas or platypuses exist. However, it's still kind of weird, and I feel like even a casual viewer would start thinking about it. It's weird because there could be an answer to all the questions I just asked, but they don't really need to answer them in the movie. However, regardless, it's still like a weird thing to think about. Anyway, it's not really a flaw, it's just something weird to think about that doesn't really matter because nothing about the plot is really affected by this in a negative way nor a positive way. Regardless though, I thought about it a lot and it confused me and now my brain hurt. Okay, wait, how did I get here? I mentioned flies. I think I was going to talk about flies. Yeah, I was going to talk about why it's kind of weird how flies didn't evolve with the rest of the animals. I assume there's other insects too in this world if there's flies. How come they didn't evolve? I mean, mice were able to evolve and they're tiny compared to huge animals. You'd think that really tiny animals would be able to talk to the tinier insects, I guess. I guess flies and other bugs are just still bugs. Do you think these animals eat flies? Do you think like the predators eat flies so they have like a healthy amount of meat? Or do you think everything's just Beyond Burger? I meant to say Beyond Meat. Also, in the beginning of the movie, kind of, there's a part where you can see Fish Town Market. So clearly they know what fish are. What's populating the oceans? Are the oceans just completely fucking empty? Are those where the whales are kept in the dolphins? Are those the only underwater things, or are there fish? Because the word fish exists. I would assume they wouldn't just invent the name fish and call it something else. I mean, you could make a case that whales are fish. Oh no, my brain. My brain is hurting trying to think of this. What? Oh, I know. Okay, anyway, back to the movie. At this point, Judy's looking for Nick to tell him what she discovered about the Night Howlers. And I know that I just bitched about this movie, but I have a few other weird things to mention. Not necessarily flaws, but weird things, I guess. Where else would I mention this shit? First of all, I find it kind of funny how neither of these two thought to look up Night Howlers, or I guess alternatively, I find it funny how different the plot would have been if they just did that. Not a flaw, just something to know. However, what could be considered a flaw is how they found out about the Night Howlers to begin with. Remember earlier how I told you to keep this part in mind?
He was an animal down on all fours. He was a savage. He just kept yelling about the Night Howlers over and over.
Well, here's the payoff. Why the hell was Otterton screaming about the Night Howlers? Okay, so number one, he went savage, and given the appearances throughout the rest of the movie, they don't look like they're even able to talk. However, even if they could talk, number two, why was he screaming about the Night Howlers? It's revealed that he was infected by it, but how would he know what he was infected by if no one else in the city can't make the connection that what's happening could be triggered by Night Howlers? It's not totally unbelievable that he'd be screaming about the Night Howlers, I guess, but given those 2 points I just gave, it just seems like it was there to push the plot forward. Okay, wait, where was I? I bitched again. Okay, so Judy finds Nick so she can tell him about her discovery so they can right the wrongs in the city. Nick is still mad because of the fallout that happened earlier, and so Judy tries to make amends by admitting she was ignorant, irresponsible, and, small-minded.
I was ignorant, irresponsible, and small-minded.
Yeah. Anyway, after her very emotional apology.
I have to fix this, but I can't do it without you. And after we're done, you can hate me, and that'll be fine. I was a horrible friend, and I hurt you.
I've made a severe... Nick forgives her, and after barely even 8 minutes of movie time, they're friends again, and this fallout is literally never brought up ever again. It's like it never even fucking happened. Whatever, though, they're friends again now, and Nick makes a quick joke mirroring their dynamic from earlier in the movie.
$200 a day, Fluff. 365 days a year since I was 12.
I really am just a dumb bunny. I really am just a
dumb bunny.
I'll let you race it in 48 hours.
Keep that in mind for later. I want to bitch about it. Not like I've done that enough times in this fucking video. Okay. Anyway, they're driving around in the car now. Nick also eats some blueberries and saves some for later. I guess. I don't know. It doesn't really seem to be that important. Anyway, Judy brings up to Nick that she caught a criminal earlier in the movie who was stealing a bunch of Night Howler bulbs. She asks if Nick recognizes the thief, which he does, and they head over to his thriving movie sale business, where they make a super hilarious joke that is now completely ruined because Disney canceled Gigantic. God damn it. Also, am I the only one a little confused why all of the animal equivalents of these movies have animal names in them? It's not like it's called Wreck-It Human in our world. What the hell? Anyway, they question him about the Night Howlers, as there's obviously a correlation between him stealing them and the animals going savage. But he refuses to talk, so they take him to Mr. Big's place.
Awesome.
Yeah. Again, Judy isn't a fake cop. She is an actual cop. Why is she all buddy-buddy with this crime boss? I guess she just lets it fly or whatever because he helps her out with some stuff. But they're also threatening this weasel with murder. I can't be the only one that thinks this is weird, right? Like, what the fuck? She's even the godmother of this shrew's baby. So I guess Judy's just okay with Mr. Big, despite him literally being a crime boss and also him definitely killing people in this room. Maybe he promises to be good, or isn't that bad, or something. I don't know. Anyway, on the plus side, at least the weasel says this.
I stole him Night Howlers so I could sell him. They offered me what I couldn't refuse. Money.
Anyway, they find the secret hiding spot of Doug, the guy Weaselton was getting the Night Howlers for. Doug is a chemist, making Night Howler flowers into very tiny circular blue capsules and shooting them at his targets so they go savage. Yeah, he does a bunch of chemistry shit to make it so when they splatter onto whoever, they go savage like they would by eating it. This is why the animals are going savage, just because somebody's been commissioning him to shoot darts at all the predators. Also, I've heard there's a Breaking Bad joke in this movie, and specifically this scene. I haven't seen Breaking Bad, but even I can tell that this whole scene seems more like a reference than anything else here. I mean, maybe the whole Walter Jesse thing could be the joke.
All right, Walter and Jesse are back, so I'm leaving now.
But again, that seems more like reference than joke. Anyway, Judy hijacks their workstation, and because this is a train car, she starts it up with the intention to get it to the police station. This is where we get another action scene, consisting of the sheep trying to stop Judy and Nick from getting the train to the police station. Judy and Nick eventually outsmart them, but when making a turn, the train falls over because they were going too fast. The train crashes and also explodes because of some propane tanks, destroying all of the evidence. Luckily though, through the use of barely visible and kind of hard to buy quick thinking, Nick was able to save the briefcase containing the gun that shoots the Night Howler, and also a sample of it that was just made in the lab. They cut through the history museum that the subway leads to, and I just want to appreciate one small detail before I get very critical. It's obvious by looking around that the museum is under construction. Well, a little bit earlier when Judy was working with her parents, if you pause on this newspaper that Judy is using to package the carrots, you can see a news article about the museum renovations happening in Zootopia. That's pretty cool. Okay, so as they're running towards the police station, the new mayor is already there to retrieve the briefcase. However, Judy, before she hands over the briefcase, wonders why she's even there. So, how did Bellwether know they were there? Well, because the sheep was actually the bad guy this whole time.
Get them. We're on the same team, Judy. Predators may be strong, but prey outnumber predators 10 to 1. Think of it, 90% of the population united against a common enemy. Should have just stayed on the carrot farm. It really is too bad. I did like you.
That's it. Prey fears predator and you stay in power?
Yeah, and I'll dart every predator in Zootopia to keep it that way. I can frame you. It's my word against yours.
It was me all along. Assistant Mayor Bellwether.
Bet you didn't expect him to be the bad guy.
Yeah, that's really something.
Holy shit, what a twist! The sheep that's gotten a total of 3 minutes of screen time prior to this turned out to be the evil mastermind the whole time? How unpredictable. How interesting. How original. How cool. How... Fuck you, Disney. I don't know why for like the past 20 years I have no idea why for like the past 20 years, twist villains have been the thing to do rather than just having regular villains. But what I hate about it is that it results in shit like this, where the mere fact that there's a twist villain bogs down the rest of the movie. Look, Zootopia is pretty good, but it's pretty good in spite of this. And this is probably the biggest flaw of the entire movie. Now, like with the second act breakup, I again can see some positives in this. Like for example, when they're visiting Bellwether and looking through the traffic cameras, you can see this piece of paper on Bellwether's phone that says Doug and his phone number. Also, now we know why Bellwether was so supportive of Judy. Helping her with the case would also expose the animals going savage and cause Zootopia to have the whole race war thing. And at least she has motivation, even if it is really bare bones for a movie that's honestly way better than this. She wants to be in charge and to rule over all, and she can harness the power of racism to obtain it.
So that's it. Prey fears Predator and you stay in power?
Yeah, pretty much. And I'll dart every Predator in Zootopia to keep it that way.
Come to think of it, we don't really see what she would have done with that power, other than just divide Prey and Predator more. So she's pretty much just really racist. Yeah, okay, never mind. Anyway, that's all the positives I can really see. There's a tiny bit of foreshadowing, and now we know why she helped Judy. Now, the negatives. Okay, so one of the worst parts about this villain is that she's revealed in like the last 8 minutes of the film, not counting credits.
Run. Get them.
And despite her having a motivation, there's no real hints to it at all, aside from this one sticky note. And it would have maybe been fine if they threw a few more hints of it throughout the movie or something. But no, I guess it's just a really well-kept secret. It's such a well-kept secret that it actually confuses me as to why she would want to do this. Also, notice how she isn't really mad or sad about anything. But that'll be important for later. On top of coming out of just absolutely nowhere, she's also very forgettable and bland and just evil without really being interesting. It's like there's a complete personality shift. One thing that could have made this villain a lot more interesting maybe is have her act like she did in the beginning, but she's evil. Make her mannerisms act nice, but her motivations and what she's doing evil. Maybe make it so she doesn't even know what she's doing is all that bad. Make it so that she has a justifiable reason in her own head to do this, other than the fact that she's just evil, instead of just giving her an angry face. Honestly, there's so little to this villain that I'm actually kind of having a hard time explaining why this villain is so bad, because there's just nothing to this character. This villain is so fucking bad, I'm having trouble explaining why she's so bad. Now, with all of that being said, this villain doesn't ruin the movie. I mean, yeah, it's absolutely made worse because of it, but it's not like this was the mystery the whole time. The mystery throughout most of the movie was, where did the otter go? And not really, who is the evil mastermind? Well, I mean, it was in the last act, but imagine how much worse the movie could have been if the entire movie was figuring out why predators were going savage, and this was the payoff to that, instead of just finding out where they went. It doesn't make the whole movie fall apart, it's just really cheap and lazy and bad. The more I keep digging into this, the more it just pisses me off. You had this great movie with great writing, great characters, amazing animation, great action scenes, and an engaging mystery throughout, and in the last 10 minutes, you have this bland, uncreative, cheap, lazy, stupid, shitty, out-of-nowhere twist villain that almost fucks up the whole movie, but doesn't just by the skin of its teeth. God fucking damn it, Disney. Why? 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 Oh yeah, and that's not the only shitty twist in this part, but I'll get to that later. What I want to get to now is the whole allegory of this movie, considering this villain's motivation.
Predators may be strong, but prey outnumber predators 10 to 1. Think of it, 90% of the population united against a common enemy.
So, if you somehow don't get it by now, or I've just been doing a really shit job of explaining the movie, which is very possible. This movie is commenting on real-world race issues and racial bias and stuff like that by using animals as a stand-in. Like I mentioned earlier, that's probably one of the reasons why the writers chose to only feature mammals, because it's easier to make a set of majority and minority animals when there's only mammals. The prey are the majority and the predators are the minority. Preds are also the animals that are targeted with more negative attitude and bias. And basically the whole movie, or more specifically the third act, is essentially commenting on racial bias and how it can affect people, or animals in this case. The whole message of the movie pretty much is to not be discriminatory and to treat everyone as equally as possible to create a better world. That's a pretty good message for a movie, especially a movie that will attract a very large audience of children. Making a movie aimed at children where the message is basically discrimination is bad is honestly kind of an important thing to have, especially right now considering the state of our world, and that's why I'm fine with how blatantly obvious this message is. Also, again, I appreciate how the characters of this movie being animals actually means something. It isn't just a decision to make the characters cuter or easier to animate. However, despite the overall message being good, the actual execution of it is kind of questionable and a little confusing. When you look at the context of everything that happens in the movie, you start to realize that maybe the way they portray the message is not that well thought out. Okay, so here's an example. The whole allegory starts becoming obvious after the fallout with Judy and Nick. And at this point in the movie, prey animals start fearing predators again because predators are going savage and hurting people. It's revealed to all be set up, but no one knows that throughout the movie. So honestly, it kind of makes sense that prey would start getting scared of predators, considering all the general public knows is that predators are going savage. The fear isn't completely unwarranted, and that's A, another reason the fallout isn't as strong as it probably should have been, and B, it kinda confuses the social commentary. There's also this question I want to pose about this world. How much of this world is a mirror of ours? Or alternatively, what is okay in this world that isn't in ours? This is an allegory, but it's not one-to-one with our world, and that could also probably cause some confusion, as there's some things that happen in Zootopia that if they were to happen in our world would kind of be frowned upon and insensitive. Example, throughout the whole movie, Nick calls Judy carrots, even when they make up.
Carrots, carrots, carrots,
Carrot, carrot,
carrots, 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 carrots.
I brought this up earlier, and I briefly mentioned how she's against it the first time,
But as the movie progresses, she doesn't seem to care for some reason.
Now, the reason why Nick calls Judy carrots is because bunnies love carrots, I guess. However, it's not like all bunnies eat carrots, or bunnies eat nothing but carrots, even in this world. So would bunnies eating carrots be considered a stereotype? And would Nick calling Judy carrots be offensive? I mean, it is maybe the first time.
You're gonna want to refrain from calling me carrots.
But she doesn't care for the rest of the movie, so I don't really know. To me, nicknaming a bunny carrots is kind of like nicknaming a white person casserole or something. Also, there's a lot of stereotypes in this movie regardless, despite this movie also kind of trying to fight against them. Like in the sloth scene, the sloths really are slow. You'd think given this movie's message, Judy would go in thinking all sloths are slow, but then Flash would work at a fast pace because he's evolved and his diet is different, and Judy gets a lesson in stereotypes or something. I'm not saying that would make the movie better, nor am I really saying that would make the movie worse. I'm just saying that seems like a scenario this movie would do, because this movie is trying to fight against stereotypes. Also, what about slurs? Earlier in this movie, Judy said a bunny can call bunnies cute, but it's offensive when other animals do it.
A bunny can call another bunny cute, but when other animals do it, it's a little...
This is apparently a stereotype thing, saying bunnies are cute.
I am so sorry. Me, the guy everyone thinks is just a donut-loving cop, stereotyping you.
But is cute a slur in this world? Or is it fine to call some animals cute and some not because it's derogatory? Is it kind of like this word, where depending on if you're American or not, the level of offensiveness changes? Like an American saying that to another American wouldn't be considered offensive at all, because in America, that isn't an offensive word. However, an American saying that same word to a UK person or vice versa could become very offensive considering the history of that word in the UK. Is it similar with cute in Zootopia, where if one animal says it to another specific animal that isn't a bunny, it's fine, but if that same animal says it to a bunny, it's now offensive or something? Was that a sensical comparison? I don't know. I think you got what I was saying. Also, another thing, while there is predator and prey in this world, there are also tons of different species in this world as well. Would all of those be considered different races, or different people in the same race? Some animals dress up as other animals, like this fox dresses up as an elephant, and this wolf at the end dresses up as a sheep. Would that be considered offensive in this world? Is this comparable to like a woman playing a man in a production in our world? Or is this comparable to a white person playing a black person in a production in our world? Is this sheepface? Or is it not, because this movie's world isn't an exact mirror of our own, but it's different in ambiguous ways? I can't be the only person who sees how some of these things might confuse the message of the film, right? Anyway, the overall message or moral or whatever the fuck you want to call it is good. But the allegory, or I guess just what we see, is kind of confusing and flawed and ambiguous in ways where it probably shouldn't be, given the film's message. Anyway, that's about it when it comes to the race allegory, I guess. But no, we aren't going back to the movie yet. Now that we've finally talked about this movie's race allegory, I feel that now would be a good time to finally finish off the deleted scenes, and specifically talk about the movie that Zootopia could have been. So as I've said earlier in this review, the original version of this movie was almost completely different from the version of the movie we see now. From the description I found on the Lost Media Wiki and the various pieces of deleted footage I've watched, here's a rough and incomplete idea of how different the story was from all of the info I was able to find. I might get a few things wrong here, just make sure you know that. This is me just making my best educated guess based off of all the footage I've seen. In the world of Zootopia, prey and predators live together, and they coexist in peace. As long as the predators have their shock collars on. Yeah, so in the original version of the movie, predators had shock collars to keep the prey happy, and if the predators got too mad, it would give them a little zap. They receive these shock collars at a young age. When they turn a certain age, they are usually thrown a taming party, where they're welcomed into the world of Zootopia by being given a taming collar. Our main character in this version of the movie is Nick Wilde, a predator. One day at the doctor's office, he needs to get his collar taken off for a checkup. When it's finally taken off, he's in pure ecstasy, and it's a feeling like no other. But then it gets put back on him.
Whoa, can you just give me 5 more seconds?
Unfortunately, no. If I had $1 every time I heard that,
you'd be the richest mammal in Zootopia.
That's when he gets an idea. Wild Times. A place where predators can take off their collars and just have fun.
You know, they say you can't put a price on happiness, and I say you can. Bang! There it is.
He gives his pitch to a bunch of banks throughout the town, but everybody rejects it because they think it's stupid, or they hate him, or they think it's stupid. He eventually goes to the mafia, I think, and eventually gets funding from them. Nick eventually creates Wild Times, and it's a big success, even being able to pay back Coleslaw, or however the fuck you pronounce his name. However, I think because of the fact that it wasn't funded legally, Nick disguises this Wild Times place as a doctor's office, and you can only enter by using this movable wall thingy. I assume this is like a reference to the fact that he got this idea at a doctor's office. One day, Nick is framed as this wolf, who in the bonus features is revealed to be a sheep in wolf's clothing, shoots a dart at Nick, which makes him go savage, which causes some sort of chain reaction and gets Wild Times discovered and also shut down. And that's really about it when it comes to the plot info I'm aware of, and also I'm confident by saying this was probably going to be the original movie. I know that this scene in the Disney Plus bonus features happens much later in the movie, but that's about it. One thing I want to point out here is that there's 2 videos here on the Lost Media Wiki. One of them is a collection of deleted scenes, and another one is a supposed recreation of. Okay, hold on, let me just pause the video for a second. I know this is stupid, but when I was getting the footage for that like deleted scenes bit where I like show the video, I actually noticed that there's an extra line in that particular video that isn't in the Disney Plus Extras tab. And that one line kind of changes a lot of the scene, kind of.
Every day is a battle. Buddy, give us a little toot. I am not going to be the one to tell him that you're just a fox. Every day is a battle. We even talked about species reassignment, but I can barely afford all the peanuts as it is, so I got him this little trunk. Buddy, give us a little toot. I am not going to be the one to tell him that you're just a fox.
Anyway, that's all I wanted to mention. One of them is a collection of deleted scenes, and another one is a supposed recreation of the original plot. I didn't pay this one any attention, just because I don't know how accurate it is to the original version of the script. So I didn't want to rely on this as if it was fact, just in case they got some things wrong. Regardless though, even with the very limited portion of story I have here, This is really interesting. I'm sure you know what I mean by now when I said that this was a completely different movie from what we actually got. Whether it's better or worse, I can't particularly say, only because it's so different from what we got, and we know so little about it. Or at least from the looks of things, it's a lot different. Apparently Byron Howard, who is pretty much the guy who came up with Zootopia, changed the story because it wasn't working for him. It felt too dystopian, according to this quote. Thinking about it, this is more of a story about segregation rather than bias. In my opinion, because I can't see this movie because it doesn't exist, this would have made an interesting story. However, the message that the film would eventually have in the final version is certainly more relevant to modern times. Anyway, the whole reason I brought this up in this video is because I just think it's interesting that they had this whole different movie planned. It's not even a case of it being another story that could be told in this world, like Rogue One, only in Zootopia. This original story, from the looks of it, is so divorced from the Zootopia we eventually got that it's almost like looking into an alternate universe. To be honest, I really want to see this movie. Like, I want to see what this alternate version of Zootopia would have been. This definitely would have been a more mature version, I guess. Like, it's kind of interesting. I don't know what the right word is. Anyway, I'll end the discussion off here. In previous deleted scene discussions, I talked more about the scenes than I did here. The reason I'm not going to go deeper into these scenes is because this is from a different version of the movie, while the other deleted scenes from the previous two discussions were from a more familiar version of the movie. I felt it was appropriate to talk about those in more detail because they could have been in the actual movie. While with these scenes, they are, again, so divorced from the movie we eventually got that I feel it wouldn't really make sense to review all of these. Also, there's the fact that I don't have all of the deleted scenes from the old movie, so, you know, I can't really review them all. I feel the most I can really do is just talk about how much of a different beast this movie would have been, as that's the only thing I can really say in confidence here. Anyway, now that I'm finally done talking about the deleted scenes, as well as the other things I discussed in this past quarter hour, let's finally head back to the movie. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so at this point they know that Bellwether's the big bad and they're running away now. Okay, I got it. Okay, so Judy and Nick are running away from the big bad wolf in Shit's clothing when Judy scrapes her knee on a mammoth tusk from a statue that's just on the floor. Nick tries to help her as he gets out the blueberries he saved earlier to use the cloth as a bandage. They eventually think of a plan and run away, but are knocked into this place by the ram, dropping the evidence case with the syrup gun thing. Then after, this...
It really is too bad. I did like you.
What are you going to do? Kill me?
Oh, of course not. He is.
Bellwether shoots a night howler at Nick and turns him savage. Then Judy and Bellwether have their hero-villain conversation that I don't really know what it's commonly called, but nonetheless it happens in like every movie where there's a twist villain.
Hero cop killed by savage fox. Think of the headline.
So that's it. Prey fears predator and you stay in power?
Pretty much. I'll dart every predator in Zootopia to keep it that way.
And then Nick eats Judy. Well, no, JK, it was just a prank, bro.
Blood!
Alright, you know what you're milking it.
You see, instead of shooting a night howler at Nick, turning him savage, Bellwether shot a blueberry at him, and it didn't do shit, and Nick was just acting like he was savage, so she would give away all the info to the police.
And I'll dart every predator in Zootopia to keep it that way.
Now, on its own, this twist is fine. Swapping out the night howler for a blueberry makes sense and is a much better twist than, this. However, the execution of the twist is the thing that really needs work here. So a few minutes earlier in the movie, when Judy picks up Nick to help find the weasel, Nick directly mentions the blueberries.
I thought you guys only grew carrots.
And is very obvious with his eating and storing for later of said blueberries. Then, like 2 minutes later, after you've probably already forgotten about the blueberries, we see the night howler capsule that's been used on the animals throughout the whole movie. And it kind of looks like a blueberry, although your brain might not make the connection, although it might Maybe. Then fast forward to this part, about 5 minutes after we saw what the capsule looks like, and around 7 minutes after it's established that Nick has saved blueberries in his pocket. He takes out his blueberries and spills them everywhere while he's using the cloth as a bandage. He even asks Judy if she wants a blueberry, directly calling attention to it.
Blueberry?
Pass.
And then, barely a minute later, the sheep shoots him with the Night Howler gun. I think you can see the issue here. The issue being, as soon as you see the blue spawn on Nick, you're thinking, oh yeah, they just swapped out the Night Howler for the blueberries because they look the same. Now, maybe if you just took out the cloth with the blueberries and just threw them off to the side to use the cloth, that would be fine. As I wouldn't say it's a stretch to assume that some people would think that the blueberry thing came out of nowhere if they didn't show the blueberries at all in this part, as they might have forgotten about this bit earlier. But directly calling attention to the fact that they have blueberries multiple times just kind of ruins the surprise of the twist. It's not like this is as bad as the twist villain. The problem with that twist is that the twist sucks and makes no sense. This twist with the blueberry would actually be pretty good if they didn't give it away right before. It's like saying the punchline of a joke before you even make the joke. It's a better twist, but they needed to work on the execution. Also, one other thing, how are those blueberries not completely smushed into paste after that whole train thing? Also, one other thing, not to really do with the blueberries, but still kind of related to the twist. Earlier in the movie, it's not really told to us, but it is shown to us that the eyes of animals affected by Night Howlers, like, increases in size, or dilates or changes in some way. So that's kind of a dead giveaway that Nick's not affected by the Night Howler, especially considering they zoom in on his eye, almost to like tell the kids, don't worry, Nick's faking it. Even on my first ever viewing of this movie, I knew something was up because Nick's eye doesn't really change at all. One thing I do like about this scene though, I like how Nick pretends to bite Judy. I don't know why, I just find that funny. It probably made some 6-year-old kids shit their pants in the theater. Anyway, they revealed to the sheep that it's all a prank and they show off the recording that they made while she was giving away her whole plan, reincorporating a bit from earlier in the movie.
365 days a year since I was 12. 365 days a year since I was 12.
I really am just a dumb bunny. I really am just a dumb bunny.
And I'll dart every predator in Zootopia to keep it that way. And I'll dart every predator in Zootopia to keep it that way.
You didn't think I was done complaining, were you? Okay, so first of all, if you remember earlier, Nick had the carrot pen this whole time. Keep that in mind for later, I want to bitch about it, not like I've done that enough times in this fucking video. And while it would be fine if he was recording what she said, we don't see him holding the pen at all. However, if we were to assume that Nick actually gave Judy the pen back despite what he said here.
Don't worry, Carrots. I'll let you erase it in 48 hours. Are you just trying to steal the pen? Is that what this is?
We also don't see Judy holding the pen. So how did they record her saying everything? You're making it really hard to argue in favor of you, movie. Also, one other thing I noticed while editing that bit, Bellwether says this.
I framed Lionheart. I can frame you too.
You didn't frame him though. It's not like you imprisoned the savage animals and then pinned the blame on him. He was the one that was imprisoning them to protect the city. It's not framing, that's just him committing a crime to fix your crime. It's not framing. So the police come out of the darkness to arrest her and... Okay, so where were they in this part?
And I'll dart every predator in Zootopia to keep it that way.
Just hiding in the dark the whole time? Or did they come as soon as the fake-out happened and just waited for Judy and Nick to finish their epic burn? Actually, come to think of it, what the hell was Judy and Nick's plan anyway?
Get it to Pogo. I'm not gonna leave you behind.
I can't walk.
Well, think of something.
I mean, yeah, replace the Night Howler with the blueberry, but what were they expecting to happen after that? They're still stuck in this dome. Was them falling into the dome part of the plan? Was the plan to make a run for it to the ZPD and this was a backup plan? If this was their backup plan, how would they escape this backup plan? How did they know the sheep would shoot them? How did they know that the ZPD would show up right at the end there? How did the ZPD even show up to begin with? Did Judy call the police? If she did, you'd think she'd do that earlier when they found the meth lab. I guess they just heard her screams and decided to wait until after they did their epic prank or something. This plan is confusing and or unfinished. I don't get it. Why is this specific part of the movie so weird and stupid? We then see a news report showing that Bellwether has been arrested and that J.K. Simmons was only falsely imprisoning those animals to protect the city, and that he had no idea she was behind it.
Did I falsely imprison those animals? Yes, I did. Classic, doing the wrong thing for the right reason.
Lionheart denies any knowledge, claiming he was just trying to protect the city.
He's also still in jail, by the way. I guess because he's still responsible for the missing animals. What a time to be alive in Zootopia. 2 mayors arrested within the span of like a week. Actually, thinking about it, I don't know why City Hall was pestering the chief to find the missing animals so much if the mayor was behind it the whole time.
We have 14 missing mammal cases, and City Hall is right up my tail to find them.
Also, in other news, the people that are affected with the night howlers are getting better because of an antidote. It's not really relevant to anything I want to talk about. I just want to mention it because it's part of the movie. Anyway, Judy gives a speech thing about how anyone can make a difference in the world, which is sort of relevant to this movie and what happened, I guess.
When I was a kid, I thought Zootopia was this perfect place. Turns out, real life is messy. We all make mistakes. We all have limitations, which means we all have a lot in common. And the more we try to understand one another, the more exceptional each of us will be. But we have to try. So no matter what type of animal you are, I implore you, try to make the world a better place. Change starts with you. It starts with all of us.
Well, that speech is very vague in terms of how it relates to the rest of the movie. And she officially inaugurates Nick into being a cop. I think inaugurate is the right word. She makes Nick officially a cop. Yay, they're cop partners now. And they even share the same chair because they're like 1/20th of the size of everyone else. Anyway, Chief Bogo comes in and assigns everyone their duties. And after everyone leaves for their assignments, Nick and Judy are assigned parking duty by the chief.
Parking duty. Dismissed.
And nobody learned anything in this movie. The end.
You got your shorts and I fly.
No, I'm just kidding. They're signed something different.
Just kidding. We have reports of a street racer tearing up Savannah Central. Shut him down.
They're signed traffic duty. So yeah, this is pretty much just the ending of the movie. They're both cop partners now. Nick still hustles popsicles, I guess.
Sly Bunny.
Dumb fox.
You know you love me.
Do I know that? Yes, I do.
Well, at least it's confirmed that this ship is like actually canon, I guess. Unless all the forward of these two online is entirely ace, though, it's still factually inaccurate. And the movie ends with another sloth joke, because as it turns out, the street racer was actually the sloth from the DMV.
Flash, 100-yard dash.
Nick. Wait a minute, how does he even drive the car? If he's like taking his foot off the pedal, wouldn't he like take 10 seconds to stop the whatever, the movie's over, so I guess it doesn't matter. And then it just cuts to some random fucking concert for the credits, because you can't end an animated movie without a dance party. Yay, I'm done with the movie. It only took me like a fucking decade. Zootopia is a good movie. Like I mentioned earlier, I think the writing and the characters and the chemistry between those characters and the animation and the mystery, they're all pretty great, or at least pretty good. It's just that after the breakup scene and moving into the third act, everything just kind of gets a lot worse. After the breakup scene, the build-ups this movie's been building towards just end up disappointing, and the quality or writing or whatever really dips. It doesn't ruin the movie or anything. The third act is fine. It just doesn't really live up to what the previous acts established, and it could have been a lot better. You know, in case you didn't get that, I only talked about the third act for like 50 minutes. Zootopia is pretty good. Almost reaching greatness, but it's just held back by what I can only assume was a rush to wrap things up. However, it's not like this is the only story that could be told in Zootopia. Tons of people talk about wanting a sequel or a TV show to follow up this movie, with Nick and Judy solving more mysteries around Zootopia or something like that. That would be pretty cool, and I think it's a massive wasted opportunity for Disney to just sit on this world that could hold so many more stories. Considering Frozen 2 and Ralph Breaks the Internet came out 6 years after their first movies, we still have until the end of like 2022 until we lose all hope for a sequel. That's refreshing. I mean, we do have this Zootopia plus anthology thing coming eventually, but what I'm talking about is like an actual series or sequel with the two main leads. I just hope that if there is a Zootopia 2, Disney actually gives them the time to make it good. Frozen 2 kinda sucks. but it's not because the creators didn't try. They tried their best under a very, very tight deadline. I just hope that if Zootopia gets a sequel, it won't suffer a similar fate. I like to think that's why there hasn't been a trailer for this movie yet. I like to think that they're working on a sequel in complete secrecy, and they'll reveal it only when they know the movie's worthy, or at least not a complete mess. So I genuinely hope that someday I'll get to make a sequel to this video talking about Zootopia 2. Or whatever the fuck they decide to call it, I don't know. Judy and Nick break the internet. I just hope that if there is a sequel, it isn't so bad to the point where I just give up reviewing it halfway through.